Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're talking about how Stellantis is kind of killing off some of the brands that we all know and love so much. But before getting into this video, as always, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And if you want to see more content just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post videos every single day. Let's get into it. So let's talk about these brands that are kind of getting quote-unquote killed off by Stellantis. Now, the four main brands we're going to talk about in today's video are Dodge, Ram, Jeep, and Chrysler. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about Alfa Romeo and Maserati as well, because although those brands don't sell a ton of units here in the US, they're still, important brands under the Stellantis umbrella that are sold in the US. So the first big thing that Stellantis is doing is they are focusing way too heavily on fuel economy and emissions. And obviously, every manufacturer has this in the back of their mind because governments, especially the US, are becoming stricter and stricter on these two fronts. But they're letting it get in the way of the identity of some of the brands that they have under their umbrella. The perfect case example is the Dodge brand. Dodge is known for big, burly muscle cars with V8 powertrains, right? That's what everyone goes to Dodge for, right? Look at their SUV, the Durango. The reason people like it is because it's a big, burly, muscly SUV, and the Durango that everyone loves is the RT, and then also the SRT, and then the Hellcat Durango. Now, yes, Dodge obviously does sell quite a few V6 Durangos, but if you notice, what they've done with the V6 Durango is they let you basically have a V6 Durango have the exterior of the V8 powered Durango so that you can feel like you're getting the muscle car Durango, even if you don't have the muscle car powertrain. And then the same thing applies to the Charger and Challenger. Well, we all know that Dodge is basically killing the V8 now with all of these cars, not because they want to, but because Stellantis wants them to, so that they can better meet fuel economy regulations and then also emissions regulations as well. And so that's kind of the first thing, is that they're so focused on that they're going to basically put themselves in the situation where some of their most iconic brands they have under their umbrella are going to completely lose their identity. Now, the next big issue with Stellantis is they are way too heavily focused on profits. Now, I understand that they are a for-profit company, that they are publicly traded, they have shareholders that they have to please. I understand that. But at the same time, again, they have a bunch of iconic brands, and when you have iconic brands like what Stellantis has under their umbrella, then sometimes, you're going to make decisions that might not necessarily make profit in the short term, but they'll be great for brand identity, which will help the company make a ton of profit in the long term. But again, they don't really care about that. And I think that the profit margins show, because right now, Stellantis, as of last quarter, is up by like over 34% with their profit margins. And then on top of that, their operating costs, right? They've actually basically increased the margin there by about 3%, which means that they've increased revenue and cut overall costs. And this is showing because they just shut down the factory that builds or they haven't shut it down yet, but they're going to shut down the factory that builds the Jeep Cherokees. They're laying everyone off that works at that factory because it's not profitable enough for their standards. And I think that this is a huge mistake, and I'll actually just, again, kind of dive a little bit deeper into this example. Although the Jeep Cherokee isn't necessarily like the coolest vehicle on the planet, especially under the Stellantis umbrella, it's still a very iconic name, and it gets people into the Jeep brand because it's significantly more affordable than something like a Grand Cherokee, a Wrangler, or a Wagoneer. Now, obviously, there are other Jeeps that are slightly more affordable, like the Renegade, for example, and the Compass, but those two vehicles don't have, I guess, the same brand identity and also just like the same legitness as the Jeep Cherokee, because, when people see a Renegade, they just go, oh, that's just a rebadged Fiat. And then when people say a Compass, they go, or see a Compass, they're like, I don't want anything to do with that. But a Jeep Cherokee, like a lot of people see that as like more of a real Jeep, like it's a real SUV. And so again, it's kind of like a lower entry point into the Jeep brand. And well, getting rid of vehicles like that means that there's going to be, I guess, less turnover of people into the brands, which means that, again, in the short term, you might make a little bit more money because you're cutting costs right now, but in the long term, you'll make a lot less money because you won't have as many people buying from the brands as what you would hope. Now, the next big thing is that Stellantis is not allowing the brands to have as many unique vehicles as they should have. And what I mean by this is that Stellantis is kind of copying what General Motors does, where they take one vehicle and then they just reskin it and rebadge it and sell it under a different brand and, charge a different price depending on what brand that is. And that's what we're starting to see with Stellantis. A good example is with the Alfa Romeo Tonale and the Dodge Hornet. They're the same exact vehicle, two different brands, two different price points, but like the Dodge Hornet, I think that it's fair to say that that's not a real Dodge, right? It's not it's not like, again, it has the Dodge name on it, but it's a 4-cylinder little crossover. It's not a big burly muscly, V8 powered, SUV or, muscle car. And so the point that I'm trying to make here is by going the quote unquote GM route, where they're just reskinning and rebadging vehicles and just throwing them under different brands and giving them that brand sheet metal, it kind of erodes at the brand's identity. And I think the Hornet, again, is a perfect case example with that. And so that's another mistake. The next big issue is the fact that they have increased the prices on product within a lot of the brands under their umbrella by a margin that is completely unsustainable. I've mentioned this over the course of several reviews with Stellantis product. I'm going to use Ram as an example because I feel like a lot of you that follow my channel are Ram fans, and I've purchased several vehicles from the Ram brand. When I purchased my 2019 Ram 1500, it was a Rebel package, and with the options it had, it stickered for about $59,000. Now, at the time that I purchased it, Ram had an offer where you could get like 15-ish% off of MSRP plus dealer discounts, so I paid about $44,000 for this Rebel. Now, in today's market, that same exact Rebel stickers for over $70,000, and you can actually still get some discounts on Rams, at least in today's market, and so I can maybe buy that truck for somewhere around $60-ish thousand, so still about $16,000 more than I paid for my truck back in 2019. And the 2022, 2023 Rebel is a nice truck, but it's not really that much different from the 2019, and so they've just increased prices way too much because, like I said in an earlier point, they're way too focused on profitability. And so sometimes you have to give up a little bit of profit to keep yourself within the price range of where buyers that are going to purchase from your brands are actually willing to pay, and they've kind of gone outside of that range because all they care about is that 34% increase in profit margin. And this leads me to the whole point of the video, talking about how we might see some of the brands that we all know and love just completely disappear because Stellantis is kind of running them. Again, they are basically changing the brands to build things that don't really line up with the brand identity, and then they're also focusing so heavily on profits that they're basically kicking a lot of people out of those brands that would normally purchase from them because they can just simply no longer afford them. And I think the sales numbers definitely show this, because if you look at Ram and Jeep right now, those are two brands that just a year ago or even 2 years ago were extremely hot, and now they're in the negative in terms of sales numbers. Like, they're slowly selling fewer and fewer cars. And I mean, if you go to a Dodge Ram Jeep Chrysler dealer, you can find tons of Rams on the ground and tons of Jeeps on the ground as well. And again, it's for a lot of the reasons that I mentioned in this video. And so now I want to dive into what I think Stellantis should instead do. So if Stellantis doesn't want to see a lot of these iconic brands die, then what they need to do is give these brands a little bit more autonomy to build what they're known for. Now, I understand that the world is becoming a lot stricter when it comes to emissions and fuel economy ratings, especially the US market, but you can work around this. And I think Ford is a great example of how you can work around this, because Ford started turbocharging a lot of their vehicles about a decade ago, and they were doing that in preparation for the fact that they knew that fuel economy ratings would become stricter and stricter. But Ford didn't get rid of a lot of their iconic powertrains and vehicles. Ford still builds the Mustang. We just got rid of the GT500, but we had a new generation GT500. We have a Raptor R right now. We've got a Bronco. We have a freaking Bronco Raptor. We have a lot of really cool vehicles from Ford that are definitely not economical, but Ford builds a bunch of very economical vehicles to offset that. And so Stellantis should take a note from Ford and do the exact same thing. So yes, make it so that Jeep, Dodge, Ram, Chrysler, Maserati, and Alfa Romeo have, economical, hybrid, or even electric powered vehicles, but let them build vehicles that are not necessarily the most economical, not because, it makes the most financial sense because it's going to give you the best return on investment, or because it's going to help you meet these emissions regulations, but because it's going to help keep the brand identity. Because I promise you, if Dodge, for example, no longer has any sort of V8 powered cars, it's not a Dodge anymore, and Dodge isn't Dodge anymore, if that makes sense. They have to have something. And again, a playbook out of Ford. So if you look at Ford with their insanely, not efficient V8 powered Raptor R and GT500, they're built in such low numbers that they don't really affect Ford's overall fuel economy rating. I mean, the Raptor R, for example, Ford's only building like 2,300, 2,400 for the first like allocation set. And so Ford might build, you know, a few thousand Raptor Rs per year. But then Ford sells like over 1 million cars per year. And so those few thousand Raptor Rs aren't really going to affect the fuel economy rating, but they definitely affect brand identity because that is such a cool vehicle. And so, you know, people are obviously not all going to be able to get the Ford Raptor R, but they're going to be able to dream of it. And so maybe people will instead get, you know, a super economical Ford F-150 with a small EcoBoost engine, and, you know, maybe they'll dress it up a little bit to kind of look like a Raptor R. You guys get what I'm saying here. So like they need to just shift a little, and this isn't even a huge shift. This is just kind of letting the brands do what the brands are known for. So that's going to sum things up for today's video, talking about how Stellantis is kind of killing a lot of their brands. I want you guys to let me know what you think about this topic. And, you know, the main reason why I made this video is I happen to like a lot of the brands under the Stellantis umbrella, and I frankly don't want to see any of them go. Even Alfa Romeo and Maserati, I understand that those two brands aren't high volume sellers, but they still build cool cars. And so it's still cool for people to be able to purchase those. And so like Alfa Romeo, for example, I see that brand potentially disappearing from the US again because it's, you know, not necessarily an expensive enough car to have massive amounts of profit in the vehicles themselves, and it doesn't sell in high volume amounts. And so it's like, it probably doesn't meet that 34% profit margin that Stellantis wants. And so I don't know. I just find it sad when companies just become like super unemotional about anything, and they're just mindless money-making machines. You always got to have a little bit of heart and soul, especially when it comes to a car company, because that's what gets people to purchase from the companies. Even if, you know, 99% of your product has no heart and soul and it's just to make money and to meet regulations, that's fine. You just gotta have at least that 1% to keep things going. I'll see you guys.